What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Love Life podcast with me, Matthew Hussey. Solo episode today. I wanted to do a last episode of the year. We're taking a break from our every week schedule for this month, and it will be more sporadic. This might even be the only episode that we release this month. And I suppose part of that has been based on my own doing something that's uncomfortable for me, which is just to say, you know what? Doing as many as we've been doing is too much right now. And we need to have a more realistic cadence. That may change again for January. It's not necessarily going to be the same going forward, but it's always been really hard for me to kind of break with things like that. I don't know about you. My nervous system is such that it's always been trained to feel like unless I'm working brutally hard all the time and unless I'm doing all of the things, something is going to go wrong. Something bad is going to happen. And over the course of my life, that has made it really hard for me to take breaks when I need them. It's made it really hard for me to get off of the treadmill. And for me, one of the biggest treadmills has been producing content. You know, I've been doing this since I was 19 years old, and I'm 37 now. You know, it's been a long run of making videos and podcasts and, you know, social media posts and all the things that go out every single week from me, which I really enjoy when I'm able to enjoy them. But, you know, too often doing things at a rate that is unsustainable makes them unenjoyable. And I felt that this week. I was sat with my team and my team were telling me we need, you to shoot X number of times this week because you're going back to London and we need these podcasts shot. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do one. Let's do one for December. And that's deeply uncomfortable for me. Even as I say it, I'm like, did I cop out somehow? Did I take the easy road somehow? But it's also a kind of growth for me to make decisions like that. Maybe you relate in your own life in some way. There are things that you are telling yourself you must keep doing in the exact same way as you've always done them, or something is going to go wrong. And I'm trying to be more discerning between when that's really true and when it's actually possible for me to adapt the way I do things in ways that are productive for me and ways that protect my energy. Because we can run ourselves into the ground forever if we're not careful. So I thought I would do an episode today that was based really around what I've been up to these last few weeks and what I'm thinking about right now. And hopefully you'll find it useful in some way. Hopefully there'll be things that I say here that are relevant to you or just could make you think about a challenge you're experiencing in your own life or could give you something that you find useful. So we'll see. You let me know if you like this format, but it felt like it could be fun, selfishly, to do a format that was a little less structured for an end of the year podcast and to just talk to you. So what have I been doing? I have been in Japan for 2.5 weeks, and I just got back. Me and Audrey just got back a few days ago. I wrote down a few lessons that I learned while I was in Japan. Some of them I had to relearn. One of them was how hard it is when I first go away on a break to actually get into the mode of having taken a break. I got to Japan, and, we had been in this incredible rush to get everything done to be able to go. And in our world, at least, that week, I'm sure it's the same in yours, that week before you go away is often the craziest week because of how many loose ends you have to tie up. And that put me in a very frenetic mode. And so when we arrived in Tokyo, I felt like I couldn't settle. I had this feeling of being on the out. I was very excited to be there because Japan is one of my favorite places in the world. It has come to feel like I don't know, second home might be a strong way of putting it, but that's how it feels. It's come to feel like this very, safe place for me to land where I feel really good. And I always want to stay longer. I never want to leave when I'm there. And when I got there in this place I was so happy in and excited to be in, I felt immediately kind of on the outside of it. I felt like I couldn't get out of the mode of my to-do list. And I kept checking my list from the last week to make sure that I had done everything. And then I even started kind of creating new lists of things. Like the absence of a list, my brain was still wired to look for the list. And I started turning new things into a to-do list, like what we were going to do that day, or where we were going to go for dinner, or what we had to get trained, because we were going to go on a trip to Kanazawa and we need to get train tickets for that. What day are we going to get the train tickets? It was like my brain took these things that shouldn't have been stressful and should have been fun and should have just been part of the trip and started turning them into stressful things. And, for a moment when I've had that feeling before, it's not new to me. And it's when I'm in it, it always feels a little worrying. It always feels a bit like, oh my God, something feels broken in my brain. I can't get it to relax. I can't get it to stop. And to my delight, after a few days, it started to slow down. And it's almost like I stopped looking at my life through the lens of a to-do list, and I started to just enjoy where I was at. And I can't stress enough how different those two worlds feel. The world of constantly living beholden to a list, and how much of that list I've checked off, and how much I've done today, how much I've achieved today. And instead just living life through the lens of actually living, of just experiencing. And in some ways letting life come to me, and leaving room for flexibility and leaving room for spontaneity and to just wander. It's such a opposite feeling to the feeling I have most days of my life. And of course, the challenge is that I'm back in my life now. I mean, I'm back home. I was in my life in Japan, but I'm back home. And of course, the to-do list kicks back in because there's all this stuff that you come back to. There's this, kind of avalanche of things that I've come back to. And I now, the challenge for me, and the challenge I'm trying to meet head on, is how do I not let life turn straight back into the to-do list? How do I take that feeling of, because I achieved it in Japan, right? I got there and managed to genuinely switch off. How do I carry that into more of my life? There's always going to be elements when you're living in everyday life and you do have responsibilities, and there are certain things where the stakes are high and where you got to get it done, and something bad will happen if you don't hand in that piece of work, or if you don't pay that bill, or if you don't have that conversation with someone. But can we leave space in our day for times where we completely drop the to-do list? In the same way that I did for, I'll say we were away for 2.5 weeks. I'll say we did it for 2 weeks because I didn't achieve it for a good 5 days. But for 2 weeks, I dropped the to-do list. So that's a bit like saying there was a moment in my year where I said the to-do list doesn't matter. The question I'm asking myself is, okay, so at what point in my day, every day, does the to-do list no longer matter? How do I take that macro thing that happens in a year and turn it into a micro way of structuring things on a daily basis? At what point, Cal Newport talks about his shutdown ritual. I think he talks about it in his book, Deep Work, I think. But he talks about a shutdown ritual, a moment where he literally tells himself shutting down. After which point, it's not about having things be incredibly structured and the to-do list. It's about putting things down. So that's something I'm trying to get better at. The trip made me realize for the 1000th time how much happier I am when I'm not on my phone. And there's nothing new about that realization to me. But what's really scary is how quickly the drug of the phone kicks back in and how little power I have over that. And what I've learned to respect is how little power I have over that. If I open up Instagram, it is so good at getting me to engage with the first piece of content that comes up on the screen that before I know it, I am down that rabbit hole again. And I have had periods of my life where I've been ultra disciplined about getting off of my phone. And in times of high stress, in times of very extreme busyness, in times where I'm experiencing a lot of, what's the word? Where my attention span is getting shorter, or where I'm in a more dopaminergic phase, my inclination towards my phone is much, much higher. But what I'm doing between now and the end of the year is a little bit of a detox, not just of my phone, but of dopamine in general. This year has been in so many ways, a year of dopamine. Between, this year, I spent the last few years writing my book, which actually, interestingly, is it's not dopaminergic. It's sitting in a room and focusing on writing, and there's something quite calm about that. There's something calming, I should say, about that. You're having to focus deeply and lose yourself in the task. But once you get into the stage of actually getting a book out there and talking about a book, all of a sudden it becomes nothing but dopamine. The appearing on podcasts and, TV shows and, watching how well or not well a book is doing, how many books are selling, and where is it in the charts, and all of that is highly dopaminergic. And that really, I think, it was very hard for me to feel calm in those months. And I feel like the rest of the year has been a year of coming down off of that. Japan, I'd love to say that Japan was not dopaminergic. I'd love to be able to tell you the story that Japan was just, I did a great dopamine detox in Japan, but I didn't, because there are all sorts of things that are, that spike our dopamine, where it's, it could be looking at our phone, it could be eating a certain kind of meal, fast food, sugar, alcohol. There are plenty of things that fuel our dopamine. And when I was in Japan, I was eating and drinking quite a lot, and it was amazing. It was great. I don't regret it. But, coming home off of that, I'm like, okay, between now and the end of the year, I'm doing a bit of a detox here. Aside from, Christmas, around, the week of Christmas, there's no escaping it in my mum's house. There will be food, and I will eat and I will drink, and I'm resigned to that. That's okay. But outside of that, I'm really focused on what are the dopamine sources that I can eliminate from now until the new year to bring myself to a state of calm. There was a book that I read by Chris Bailey, I think it was called How to Calm Your Mind, that I really loved. And in this book, he really talks about calm as being like the pinnacle of great things to feel, that happiness derives from calm. It doesn't derive from excitement. It derives from calm, from a feeling of peace. And that has been my experience as well. And calm, therefore, is something that this year I've found. Calm has been like a word for me that I've thought over and over and over again. This has to be the kind of North Star of my life. And that probably tells you something about what my life naturally is, right? If I tell you calm is the most important thing to me, then you know that much of my life is not calm. But calm is the focus for me at this point, and removing the sources. And this might be a good moment for you to think about, what are some of the things in your life that take away from your calm? What are the things that you do that aren't good for you, or that aren't productive for you, or that routinely make you feel bad or stressed or anxious, out of control? And how could you start to measure those things more? How could you start to eliminate some of those things? So that's something that's on my mind. But what I am doing, and one of the things I've learned in my life, is to do these things in a way that's actually manageable. So for example, I know, having come off of a 2.5 week trip where I did not take care of my body, I did not work out, I ate a lot of unhealthy things, and I did it every day. I'm coming back and going, okay, little reset time. I got to get back to training. I got to get back to the gym. I got to get back to jiu-jitsu. And I have to get back to eating clean. But I'm also, there was a point in my life where I was extremely militant. There was a point in my life where I could exact punishing standards on myself for those things. And I was pretty good at it. But what I learned about myself was that when we do that, or at least for me, when I do that, the way I'm engineered is that when I swing back in the other direction, I swing hard. And then I can do a lot of damage, and I can set myself way back. One of the things that I have learned is a kind of moderation that has really helped me. So, for me, moderation might be, if I've been relatively healthy this week, instead of being like, I'm living for that Friday cheat meal, if I get to Thursday and there's something that I get excited to eat, I don't overthink it. I allow myself that thing because I know that I'm doing the right things most of the time. And it really lets the air out of that urge to be crazy, to, completely go off the rails. And it's been, for me, a way of teaching myself that you can live a life that's more moderate. You don't have to be so extreme all the time. And that's been very, very helpful for me. So for me, it's about One of the things that's helped me is going, not where do I want my body to be in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks, but where do I want to be in 6 months? Where would I like to be by this time next year? Or where would I like to be in 3 years? When I give myself a longer time frame, I don't actually find it to be demotivating, because I know a lot of people, they get motivated by, where am I going to be in 3 weeks? What am I going to achieve? How much weight am I going to lose in the next 60 days? But for me, that always goes right back to exacting that punishing standard. If I say to myself, like next year, I have a group of members. It's my smallest group, my smallest coaching group that exists, called Club 320. And next year, we're going to Cape Cod in June, David? I think it's in June. Yeah. We're going to Cape Cod in June. And I can look at that and go, where would I like my body, my health, my flexibility, my stamina, my body fat? Where would I like those things to be by the time that comes around? And because that gives me a 6-month window, I can start to look at what's sustainable to do over a 6-month period to get there. And if it's a punishing standard, I won't do it for 6 months. So it better leave room for fun. It better leave room for joy. It better leave room for me to live my life. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. So it both takes away that punishing standard and forces me to create a sustainable approach to getting there, while also making it enjoyable, because I'm like, oh, okay, I've got 6 months to get there. I don't have to be crazy trying to get there in 1 month in a way that is utterly unenjoyable. I think James Clear said, focus on trajectory over results. What's the trajectory? Is my weight moving in the right direction? Is my muscle moving in the right direction? Is my health moving in the right direction? As opposed to, how quickly did I get results? One of the things that Audrey and I have decided is that we want to travel less next year. I'm pretty sure we'll hold to that. We'll see. I think we will. But to travel less next year, because this year has been a lot of travel. So one of our kind of end of year assessments, and I encourage you to do the same thing. You don't have to do some big formal thing that says, you're going to sit down for a day and look at everything that went right and wrong this year and then model out next year based on all of that. You could do that, but at the moment I say that, you're probably going to get overwhelmed and then just not do it. I would encourage you even just to think for 5 minutes, like back of a napkin, what are some truths? I call them truths. Like, what are some truths you learned this year? And one of the truths Audrey and I learned was that, traveling as much as we did this year really made it hard for us to have the stability we needed in our routines, in our ability to take care of ourselves, our ability to make our home the way we want it to be, because we were never home long enough to actually invest in it and to make it beautiful and nice and special, and do all of the things that we wanted to do. Having the stability that allowed us to invest in our relationships. So there was a lot of things. The travel we did this year was beautiful, but for a lot of reasons, it feels true to us that next year we will benefit more from the stability of traveling less than we will through the, let's say, the excitement or the feeling of, spontaneity of traveling more. These truths, by the way, they guide most of our lives. And truths can be a big thing, like I just said. Like, my truth is that we need to travel less next year. But, and by the way, like, that extends to, we have all sorts of principles we've put in place as a result of that. So for example, it's not that we're going to do no trips or no vacation. It's that if we do a vacation, we want to do it within a time zone that doesn't mess us up. We want to take shorter trips, not go away for weeks on end, but instead go away for a long weekend. We want to travel more of America because that, Audrey is still new to America, she's only been here for a couple of years. So we're like, oh, we need to see more of America. Let's go and that ticks all the boxes. It's more stable. It requires less travel, shorter trips, and in the same time zones. So that truth gets translated in practical ways next year in those ways. But a truth can also be something small. This is part of the same concept, but I would just want to encourage you to think in these ways. When we realize something works for us, we record it. And when we realize something doesn't work for us, we record it. So here's a specific example. Audrey, when we were booking our trip back from Japan, Audrey said, I was begging for like a couple more days, and she was like, we have to fly back on a Saturday. I was like, can't we make it Sunday, get the whole weekend? She was like, no, we have to travel back on a Saturday. Because remember, we already knew this as a truth. We've traveled back on Sundays before from trips, and it's usually miserable because we get back in the evening, we then have a couple of hours before bed, and then we wake up into Monday and we feel ambushed by the week. We feel ambushed by work requests. When we get back Saturday, it gives us a day to figure out our stuff, to unpack, to be in a good state, so that by the time Monday rolls around, we feel a little bit more calm going into it and we don't hate life. So she was like, she put her foot down and she was like, we have to travel back Saturday. At the time, I was mad about it. I was like, we should travel back on Sunday. We should get one more day in Tokyo. Well, when we got back on Saturday and we felt like hell, I said to her, thank you so much for making us like remember our truth that traveling back on a Saturday is what works for us. Because when you don't follow a truth that you've learned in the past, you will pay the price for it. If you've already learned a truth about yourself, don't ignore that truth in the present. Live by it. It's a way of honoring what you've already learned. Otherwise, you just have to learn the same truth over and over again. So you can literally break them down by like something as specific as the day that you fly home from a holiday because you've realized that works for you. So as you go through your life, think about what things are just true that I need to write down in a kind of manual about myself and about how to get the most out of myself. What else did I learn? Bringing intentionality to everyday life. One of the things that I really love about being in Japan is the intentionality that you see in people in so many things that they do. One of the things I learned was not to expect a fast cup of coffee in Japan, especially if you're going to a nice coffee shop, because it's like a meditation watching them make the coffee and take the box of Tupperware out of the fridge that they need, or to, grind the coffee and to do that. Everything is done with a kind of intentionality. And if you're coming from the fast-paced life of, much of the West, it can frustrate you. You can be like, I literally have 5 minutes. I have to go. And then what happens is you start to actually slip into that pace and you realize, oh, I'm like, let me just sit here and enjoy waiting for my coffee. Let me enjoy the fact that someone is actually taking their time to do this really well. And it even watching the way that the Japanese often treat objects even makes me want to treat objects more intentionally. It makes me respect things more. I notice about myself and many of us here in America or England, where I'm from, we don't always have a lot of respect for objects. There's often a lot of we just throw things around, or we chuck something on the sofa, or we do this, or we do. There's a a kind of presence and respect that is often applied to objects, where there's all, it's funny because I remember I was in an event earlier this year with Eckhart Tolle, and even he was speaking about the idea of being more mindful of the objects in your life and having more respect for the objects in your life, even if they're not expensive. We might more naturally have respect for an object that we know is expensive, but the inexpensive objects, the piece of Tupperware that you take out of the fridge and you place down and you open up and then you take what you need from it and you put it back. There is something very beautiful about being more present, being more mindful, and having respect for those things. You may or may not have the same experience, but for me at least, watching that and seeing that intentionality, it's helped to create a level of respect in me for things in general, to apply more mindfulness to all sorts of things in my life. I was reminded again in Japan of the importance of my relationships. I was there with my wife, Audrey. I was there with my cousin, Billy, my brother, Stephen Hussey, our friends, George and Elizabeth. And we got time together and it was special. And I've learned this lesson so many times in my life, that the moments that really matter to me are the moments that I get with people I care about. It doesn't just have to be family, but when I spend great moments with wonderful human beings, that's the good stuff. And it's the stuff that we rarely prioritize, especially when we're in achievement mindset, especially when we're in an anxiety-fueled state of feeling like we're not getting enough done, or we're not making enough progress, or we're not getting far enough, fast enough, or even just frankly being stressed about paying bills, or worrying about money. We aren't. Our relationships are rarely the things that we prioritize in those moments. And every time I get special time with people that I care about, people that not just people that I know and love, but just people that I really admire, or people that I think are wonderful human beings. We spent time with two friends of ours who live in Japan, Matt and Hana, and we had some wonderful moments with them as friends and got closer to them. And it's such a wonderful antidote to the constant obsession with achievement, the constant obsession with more, the constant obsession with trying to make things happen in our life, or realizing our potential, which Oliver Berkman, in his new book, Meditation for Mortals, which is a wonderful book, talks about that as a kind of disease in itself. If we base what we wake up and do every morning on wanting to realize our potential, and he said that is a recipe for being anxious or feeling like you're constantly under pressure your entire life. Because how do you know when you've realized your potential? There's always a bit more potential to eke out, no matter what you've achieved. And so it's a recipe for never really being present in our lives. But when I'm with friends and family and having moments of love with those people and connection, I'm not thinking about realizing my potential. I'm just enjoying those special moments in life of connection. I'll finish with this. I had this deep sense of fear and sadness halfway through the trip, where I texted. We had a group chat between me, Audrey, George, Elizabeth, Stephen, Billy, and Lauren. And I put a message in the group chat halfway through the trip, and I said exactly how I was feeling. I said, guys, I'm having the most wonderful time, and I'm scared that it's going to be over soon. And it really did sum up how I was feeling. I thought, I'm having the best time. And I'm also have this deep sense of sadness that it's going to end. Ironic, given that we were there during the autumn, which is Koyo season, which is the other side to the cherry blossom season, the sakura season, when the trees, various maple trees across Japan start to turn this incredible shade of deep, dark red. And people go kind of, hunting for koyo across Japan and looking for that beautiful shade of red that doesn't last very long at all. And with the way that the weather is changing and the climate is changing, is lasting even shorter than it normally does. And people go hunting for it, looking for it. And part of the beauty of it that's recognized by Japanese culture is that it is impermanent. They have a phrase, mono no aware, which is the deep pathos, the sadness that we feel at the fleeting nature of things. And there's another Japanese word or phrase that I have fallen in love with over recent years, which is ichigo ichie, which means this moment, never again. We were in a taxi in Japan, and this was already one of my favorite phrases. And there was a taxi driver that we had the best exchange with. The loveliest man, was having such a lovely time talking to us. We were loving talking to him. And at the end of the trip, he was speaking, broken English. But he said, I've loved this. This was so great meeting you. And we said the same. We were like, we wanted to hold on to it. And he said, ichigo ichie. This moment, never again. I am trying to get better in life, and Audrey is working on this too, at being okay with the impermanence of things, not trying to hold on too tightly to things, knowing that there is inevitably always another phase coming, another chapter coming that will have its own beauty and its own season and its own things to wonder at and be in awe of. And that if I stop trying to hold on tightly to the current phase, I'm more free to fully embrace it. If I'm in Japan and I'm worried that it's going to end, then I'm not really enjoying my time in Japan. And ironically, if I fully embrace it, if I really lean into it, there's actually much more of a chance that I will feel nourished by it and I will feel ready for the next thing. But when we're holding on so tightly, we never really are on the inside of the moment. We're never really fully experiencing it. And as a result, we don't feel ready to part ways with it. So I'm trying to get better at that, at being okay with the impermanence of things, albeit that, that phrase mono no aware it's not a negative thing, but it is about the feeling we get at the impermanence of things, which can be deeply melancholic. It can be deeply stirring in a way that can make us feel sad, but that doesn't mean it's negative. It's the fact that it's going to end is actually what allows us to appreciate its beauty. And I'm even trying to remind myself of that, when I was in Japan and I was thinking about, oh my God, these moments with people I love are so special. I need to create more of them. Even that, it's funny. It's not untrue, right? It is true that I want to strive to create more moments with friends and family. But even that kind of immediate attitude to having had wonderful moments with friends and family is a kind of clinging, right? Because instead of saying, let me just enjoy the fact that this just happened. I did, in fact, just get wonderful moments with friends and family. Instead of trying to control that and going, well, when's the next one? I can enjoy the fact that that just happened. So I will wrap it up there. I am really always so honored that you spend any time or energy listening to anything I say. It's a special thing that, anyone is interested or excited to hear one's thoughts. I met people in Japan who had been watching my videos for years, in some cases decades. People came up to me on the street or in hotels, in restaurants, and that was such a special, special thing for me to know that this has been with people over the years. I hope that this episode hasn't been a bore. And even if it has for some of you, I hope that there are others among you who will come up to me a year from now and say, that one thing, that one episode you did when you were talking about Japan, that really meant something to me. That really, struck a nerve with me. I really hope that's true. It means something to me. And if what I've learned in my life is if something resonates with me, then it's going to resonate with a lot of people. Next year is about simplicity for me. Next year is about doing less better. I'm focused on a small handful of projects. The number one thing being my Love Life membership for all of I know I have thousands of members across the world. I'm spending a lot of time coaching my members. I'm focused on my retreat program, which is happening next year in September, which is going down to a 2-day retreat because we want more people to be able to come to this retreat. So we're really excited to be taking it to a 2-day experience. That means more people will be able to travel for it. They won't need to get as much time off of work. Or if you have kids, you won't need a babysitter for a full week for you to attend. And it's also priced in a way that many, many more people are going to be able to come. So I'm really excited about that big event that's happening. We have a lot of focus right now on Matthew AI, which is serving thousands of people across the world right now who have me in their pocket, coaching them 24 hours a day. If you want to find out more about that, go to askmh.com. And I'm focused on trying to create great videos for you, great podcasts for you, great content for you for free that is going to help people, but also hopefully increasingly be a reflection of my soul, my artistic side, my creative side. We have an amazing team around us of creative people, and we want to do really, really special work for you. And I want to take it to another level this coming year. And I'm hoping that by finding the right cadence of how often to release content, I can free up time and energy and space to make the things that I do release, things that really I feel come from my soul and have my thumbprint on them. Because I think that's our best work, is when it comes from that place. And I'd love to play more and to be more creative and to think of ways to really do it differently, so that every time you come to one of my videos or engage with us, there's that feeling of, oh, there's something going on here. There's something special going on here. But in the meantime, I hope you have had a wonderful year. I hope that no matter how the year is ending for you, you take time to reflect on the ways that you can be proud of yourself this year, the ways that you have made progress. And if you're in a difficult season right now, know that as much as there is an impermanence to the good moments in our life, there's also an impermanence to the bad moments in our life, to the challenging moments in our life. And that impermanence is even more significant if we can bring proactiveness to those times in our life and acceptance to those times in our life. And together on this journey, we can work on making life better and better each day. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And have an amazing holiday, however you celebrate it. And I look forward to all of the wonderful things that we're going to do together in 2025. Leave me a comment. I'd love to read them. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you soon.